There is a hidden language running through every relationship, a language most people never consciously study, yet everyone feels it instinctively in the way they react, the way they remember certain moments, and the way some words seem to stay in the mind longer than others without any logical reason. It is not just what you say that shapes emotional connection, and it is not even only how you say it, but something more subtle, more deeply embedded in human psychology. And that is the way you name someone you care about. Because a nickname is never just a label, it is an emotional signal, a private meaning, a repeated pattern of recognition that slowly builds an internal association in the mind of the person hearing it. And over time, that association begins to influence how they feel when they think of you, even in your absence. And this is where language stops being communication and starts becoming emotional conditioning. Not in a manipulative sense, but in the way the brain naturally links emotion with repetition, tone, and context. Most people underestimate this completely because they assume attraction is built only through big actions, grand gestures, or dramatic emotional moments. But in reality, human bonding is far more subtle and often far more dependent on small, repeated signals that feel personal, safe, and emotionally consistent. When someone hears a nickname repeatedly from a person they already feel something for, the brain does something interesting. It begins to assign emotional weight to that word, and through neurological processes involving dopamine and oxytocin, the emotional meaning of the interaction becomes stronger than the literal meaning of the words themselves. Dopamine is involved in anticipation and pleasure, which means the brain starts to associate that specific voice, that specific word, and that specific moment of connection with a feeling of reward, while oxytocin, often linked to trust and bonding, strengthens emotional closeness and a sense of safety. And over time, this combination creates a powerful internal response where even a simple word can trigger feelings of warmth, familiarity, and emotional attachment. This is why certain names or nicknames, when used with the right emotional tone and timing, can feel far more impactful than a standard compliment, because they are not just describing something, they are personalizing it. They are transforming a general interaction into something uniquely directed at one person. And that sense of exclusivity is something the human mind naturally values. When someone feels uniquely seen, not as a category of person, but as an individual who is being emotionally recognized in a specific way, it creates a subtle but powerful shift in how they relate to the speaker, because emotional connection is often less about logic and more about how deeply someone feels understood in small, repeated moments. For example, when a simple affectionate name is used like pretty lady, it is not just a comment on appearance, it is a layered signal that combines recognition, admiration, and emotional framing, because it is not only saying she looks good, it is also implying she is worth noticing in a gentle and respectful way, and depending on tone and timing, that can create a feeling of being valued rather than merely observed. The same word spoken in a rushed or casual way might feel empty, but spoken with presence and attention, it becomes emotionally meaningful because the human brain is highly sensitive to perceived intention behind words, not just the words themselves. Similarly, titles like queen or princess operate on a different psychological level because they tap into identity and emotional archetypes rather than surface-level appearance. These words carry symbolic meaning related to worth, value, importance, and emotional positioning. And when someone is addressed this way in a context of emotional closeness, it can reinforce feelings of being cherished or emotionally prioritized. But the impact is not in the word alone, it is in the emotional energy behind it. Because if such words are used without authenticity, they lose meaning quickly and can even create emotional distance. Whereas when they are used naturally and without dependence, they can strengthen the sense of connection and emotional polarity between two people. There are also softer, more playful forms of naming that influence emotional chemistry in a different way, like calling someone cutie or using light, affectionate language that introduces playfulness into the interaction. These types of words often bypass overthinking because they are not heavy or formal. Instead, they create a sense of ease, emotional lightness, and comfort, which is important because not all attraction is built through intensity. Some of it is built through safety and relaxation. When a person feels emotionally safe, their natural personality becomes more expressive, and that expression itself deepens attraction, because emotional freedom is one of the core experiences people seek in close relationships without even realizing it. Then there are nicknames like Sunshine, which operate through emotional appreciation rather than direct attraction. These words acknowledge the effect someone has on your emotional state, not just their presence or appearance. And this type of recognition is deeply meaningful because it validates impact, not just identity. When someone feels that their presence improves your emotional world, it creates a sense of emotional significance that goes beyond surface level interaction. Because humans are naturally drawn to feeling meaningful in the lives of others, and being someone's source of warmth or positivity creates a strong emotional anchor. As emotional language deepens further, words like angel introduce a different layer entirely, one that connects to purity, comfort, and emotional safety. These kinds of names are not about excitement or intensity, but about emotional grounding, and they often activate nurturing instincts and feelings of calm connection. On the other end of the emotional spectrum, more provocative or playful terms can introduce tension and attraction simultaneously, not through explicit meaning, but through tone, timing, and confidence. And this balance between comfort and tension is often what keeps emotional dynamics alive and evolving. However, what most people fail to understand is that the real power of these words is not in the words themselves, but in consistency, authenticity, and emotional alignment. If a nickname is used too early, too frequently, or without genuine emotional connection, it loses its meaning and becomes noise instead of signal. But when it emerges naturally from shared experience, emotional comfort, or personal connection, it becomes part of a private emotional language that only two people understand. And that is where the deepest form of attachment often develops. Because shared language creates shared reality, and shared reality creates emotional bonding. In the end, every nickname, every term of affection, every repeated word between two people becomes part of an invisible emotional architecture that shapes how they experience each other over time. And while most of it happens unconsciously, its effects are very real, because the human mind remembers emotional patterns far more than logical explanations. And so what begins as a simple word slowly transforms into a feeling, then into an association, and eventually into a memory that carries emotional weight even in silence. That is why small details in communication often matter more than dramatic moments, because love, attraction, and connection are not built in a single instant, but in countless small repetitions of feeling seen, feeling valued, and feeling emotionally understood through something as simple, yet as powerful, as the way someone chooses to name you.